Unbelievable what's happening right now. Christian Lindner, no joke, is giving a speech about Bitcoin in the packed Bundestag, and he's dropping the Bitcoin bomb here. That was definitely not on my bingo list for 2024, that we'd actually see a political debate in Germany in the packed Bundestag. Christian Lindner is talking about missed opportunities here. He's talking about the crypto-friendly policies in the U.S. He criticizes the lack of discussion about Bitcoin in Germany and the missed big opportunity. What missed opportunities, he asks, what chances are we losing here? It is incredibly exciting that we are now seeing this discussion here in Germany. I have long criticized the fact that the discussion is only taking place in the USA, while Germany has missed the whole boat. And now we're seeing the discussion come to Germany a bit late, but maybe better late than never. We're also going to check out the whole clip and excerpt from Christian Lindner because this is really something else. I never would have expected to see such an intense discussion happening here in Germany already. We'll also take a look at the whole clip and excerpt from Christian Lindner because it's really brutal. I never would have expected to see such an intense discussion happening here in Germany already. And you have to be clear, he really threw himself into the fire for Bitcoin here. He clearly said that we can't afford to sleep on this technology here. That's totally understandable. I mean, Bitcoin is a fundamental technology. If you sleep on the internet, you end up with a massive disadvantage. If you sleep on the automobile, you end up with a massive disadvantage. If you just sleep on things like, for example, if you sleep on something like smartphones or whatever, you end up with a massive disadvantage too. And it seems like the politicians in Germany are finally realizing this. But it's probably all driven by Donald Trump. Donald Trump is really the one who brought FOMO to Germany. And now, let's imagine what would happen if Donald Trump even bought Bitcoin and introduced a reserve strategy. Yesterday, I mentioned in a video that Jack Mallows apparently has leaks suggesting that Donald Trump will issue an executive order on his first day in office, basically an emergency law, to make Bitcoin part of the reserve strategy in the U.S. And now we're seeing the whole story play out here in Germany. In Germany, things like this usually come a lot later. The US is leading the way, and then Germany is basically following behind. Germany had a huge opportunity. We had all the events about Bitcoin in the Bundestag. Joanna Koda really went all out here, doing everything she could to get Germany to establish a strategic Bitcoin reserve. And of course, there's Stefan Schmidt, who organized all of this behind the scenes. Greetings to you. See you soon in El Salvador. We missed the boat, we sold our Bitcoin, and now we can only jump in as second or third movers after the US and other big nations. That's a shame, but as I said, better late than never. But even so, you have to know that everyone gets the Bitcoin price that they deserve, and Germany then buys Bitcoin for 200 US dollars, and others who bought it much earlier, who ran to the German front. Bhutan started Bitcoin mining in 2017 or so. El Salvador has been buying Bitcoin every day for a long time now, and others are just coming in later. I don't want to talk too much right now. Just take a look at what Christian Lindner has to say.
I have heard what is happening in the world, what innovations are taking place that are bypassing Germany. I have not heard from the Chancellor, the Minister of Economic Affairs, or the leader of the opposition that a new crypto-friendly policy is now being implemented in the USA, and that the USA has long since wanted to surpass the advantages that we could also have with Bitcoin. And I hear nothing about this in a central debate in the German Bundestag. What an omission, what opportunities are being missed.
And that's pretty wild. It almost sounds like Christian Lindner is feeling some FOMO, fear of missing out, because in the end, the Bitcoin party is happening, Bitcoin is going to the moon, and now Bitcoin is on a crazy bull run, and Germany hasn't filled its bags. The problem is, you really need to prepare when the Bitcoin price is still low during a bear market, and so on. But then it's just not interesting, and it makes it politically harder to push through, and so on. I mean, when it comes to Bitcoin in the Bundestag, they actually tried to bring Bitcoin to the politicians during the bear market. They basically invited all the politicians. I'm sure Christian Lindner got an invite too, along with other folks, but most of them just ignored it or slept on it. You can see it here too. The Minister of Economics has no clue. The Chancellor has no clue. The old parties have no clue. Nobody here has a plan for Bitcoin. The only ones who are starting to open up a bit are Christian Lindner, and you could say Frank Schaffler from the FDP. Plus, we also have the Bitcoin wing in the AfD with Mr. Boringer, and I think there are a few other folks in the AfD who are pro-Bitcoin. They even included it in their election program. And in the end, this is all a result of pressure from the Bitcoin community. I'll mention this again in the interview with Mr. Boringer from the AfD, who's really pushing for Bitcoin. He said that the pressure from the Bitcoin community has gotten so strong that he finally had to say something. To Frank Schaffler and Christian Lindner, the pressure is just so high now that we have to talk about Bitcoin that it really needs to be brought to the forefront. Maybe they're realizing, hey, there are a ton of voter voices to be gained here, just like in the U.S. In the end, it's also a topic to capture voter support. So you really have to be super careful here. Why are all these proposals coming from Frank Schaffler and Christian Lindner now? Why didn't we see this 1,002 years ago? Of course, because it's election season again, and with the elections coming up, they need to find some new topics to get people excited. They gotta say, hey, vote for my party, and I'll turn Germany into a Bitcoin stronghold and all that. I mean, Christian Lindner hasn't said that yet. He hasn't actively pushed the idea of turning Germany into a Bitcoin country or anything like that. He just said that we can't sleep on innovation, but from the way it sounds to me, if he's serious about it, he needs to put that in the election program. So I can definitely see us having not just one party, but two parties this year that actively include Bitcoin in their election programs. One being the AfD and the other being the FDP. So I can definitely see us having not just one party, but two parties this year that actively include Bitcoin in their election programs. So we've got the AfD and then the FDP. But I gotta say, the thing that leaves a bad taste in my mouth is that all these proposals always come when the Bitcoin price is going up. The AfD put that proposal out there, and even though they say it has nothing to do with the price, I can kind of understand that, maybe even believe it. I'll give Mr. Boehringer that much. But the FDP is doing the exact same thing, coincidentally. And the FDP is definitely a party that you have to keep a very close eye on, I'd say. This means that the FDP basically stands for freedom, but as soon as it is elected, it essentially introduces socialism. That's a bit of an exaggeration. I mean, they throw around slogans about freedom and say they're all about less regulation, cutting taxes, and all that jazz. And if you actually look at how they vote and what they get involved in, you see that they sometimes support more regulation, and they're not really all in for those big tax breaks and so on. It's kind of like a little socialist trick package. And if you then look at where they vote and what they are involved in, you can see that in some cases they are in favor of more regulation. In other cases, they are not in favor of such drastic tax breaks and so on. That's definitely a bit of a socialist trick package. And when I mean socialism, I of course don't mean hardcore socialism. But even state interventions are socialist instruments. Even if you say, hey, we're putting in some crazy regulations or interfering more in the free market, those are also socialist tools. That's why you really have to look at this very, very critically. I'm still not sure if the FDP is really a liberal party. I would tend to lean more towards that. Oh, look back there, dogfight. Do you hear that? Crazy, those dogs are going wild, right? They probably know the bull run is coming, and they're totally on fire, knowing that Bitcoin is about to shoot to the moon. Everyone's jumping on the Bitcoin bandwagon. And things are really heating up here. Oh, they're fighting again. Man, they need to calm down a bit. Hey, chill out, man, everything's good. Bitcoin just hit a new all-time high, even broke the all-time high in euros now. We're really getting into it, so there's no need to stress out like this. I don't get that at all. But in any case, what Frank Scheffler demanded was that he even went further and said that the FDP or Germany must not only open up to Bitcoin, must not only miss out on the technology, but the ECB and the Bundesbank must take Bitcoin into their balance sheet, so they must pursue a Bitcoin reserve strategy. And that's the crazy part, we're seeing more and more of these reserve strategy discussions. I really think the Bitcoin reserve strategy is going to be the buzzword of 2024 in the Bitcoin scene. I haven't heard a word as often as this one. I can barely even say it anymore. Everyone's talking about it, all the states, other countries, China, Russia. There was this guy who suggested it. Now there are some in Japan, now some in Thailand. This whole thing is popping up everywhere. Now there are people here in Germany talking about the topic. And now the question is, okay, when are people going to get it? Are people going to get this bull run? Are they going to realize it at 1 million, at 2 million, at 3 million? It's definitely a topic of conversation, and that's already a really positive sign that people are talking about it. So I'd say they're at least open to a debate, and I'm pretty sure there will be a big discussion about it sooner or later. But I just can't imagine that Scholz, Habeck, and the others are going to catch on to this anytime soon. It's really going to take some time until the Bitcoin price is at that level and so on. And then they're going to have to debate Bitcoin too, because you're basically forced into it. Right now, you can do it voluntarily. That's the game theory at play. You can be the first mover if you want, but if you sleep on it and Bitcoin gets established, and then everyone realizes that using Bitcoin gives you massive advantages in business, in government, as an individual, or as a family office, once the whole world figures that out, you'll be forced to use Bitcoin. It's just like if everyone around you is driving cars and you're still using a horse-drawn carriage, you're going to be way too slow. Germany will get left behind economically and geopolitically too. Everyone else will have the rocket that lets them fly through the universe, while Germany is still stuck with the horse and carriage. And that's why it's so important not to miss the boat. Jason Lowery argues Bitcoin is vital for national security. In the global Bitcoin landscape, it's not a war, but if you're not attentive, you'll miss out. Cynthia Lummis compares it to the moon race. Now it's about who builds a Bitcoin reserve first. I'm pessimistic about Germany. Only a few politicians are interested and not fully committed. I can't fully trust Christian Lindner yet, but at least he's discussing it, which is positive. Cynthia Lummis always says it like that. That is, back then there was a race to see who would be first to the moon, and now there is a race to see who will be first to build the big Bitcoin reserve strategy. And like I said, I'm still really pessimistic about Germany because these are just the first, let's say, light bulbs that are lighting up for a few politicians, and they're not even necessarily 100% serious about it. I can't fully trust Christian Lindner on this. I'd love to, but I can't completely buy into it yet. But at least, he's talking about it, which is a good sign he's not fighting against it. Most of the time, you see in the Bundestag, for example, You've seen it from the Greens or even from CDU politicians who just said, yeah, Bitcoin is just stupid, or we want to get rid of the 1-year deadline and so on. So it is better if someone is neutral or a little positive, like when someone is shooting down the idea. But still, you have to be a bit skeptical about whether you can really take him seriously. When he's all about Bitcoin and everything, Christian Lindner always talks about the big topic of the stock pension. I mean, how crazy would it be if we didn't have a stock pension, but instead had a Bitcoin pension? I mean, just think about it. We could really fix all the pension problems in Germany. The whole pension point system is a pay-as-you-go system, where one person pays in and another gets it back out. And we've got a bad demographic situation, which means there are way too few contributors and way too few payees. So we have ticks that are sucking the money out, but we don't have any workers bringing money into the system. And that's a big problem. It's really going to push Germany to the brink of collapse. That's my big prediction. For once, there are some serious cuts being made. They're already doing that now, pouring so much money from the federal budget into pensions. But just imagine, just like the US is planning a debt relief through Bitcoin, we could also restructure the pension system in a similar way. Not with a stock pension, but with a Bitcoin pension or even a Bitcoin-backed stock pension. You could mix Bitcoin and stocks. That way, you wouldn't even have to cover the entire pension 100% with Bitcoin. Not with a stock pension, but with a Bitcoin pension, or for all I care, a stock pension backed by Bitcoin, you could mix Bitcoin and stocks. So you don't even have to cover the entire pension 100% with Bitcoin. You can also just do that with, I don't know, E.G. You pay 100 euros into your pension fund, and from that 100 euros, they just buy €5 worth of Bitcoin. The 5 euros will probably outperform the entire pension, as you can see. I'm paying in 500 euros a month. And what do I get back? Adjusted for inflation, I somehow get 50 euro back, if that. When the euro collapses and the whole thing blows up in 2001, and I assume that will happen sooner or later, then all the pensions will be gone anyway. From that point of view, you can actually tick it off the list anyway. So I've definitely written off the money I paid in. I'm not putting anything in right now, but the money I put in back then, yeah, I've completely written that off. And now, a big recommendation for you. Check out the link below. I'm putting in a link to a TREZOR hardware wallet. It's the easiest way to store your Bitcoin safely, efficiently, and with full protection against hackers and attacks. It's really simple. And I also recommend checking out Bitcoin. It's the easiest way to buy Bitcoin in Europe. I'll put a link in for you, and you can get discounts with the code Bitcoin and help for both Bitcoin and TREZOR when you buy a hardware wallet or acquire Bitcoin. You can really do both super simple and easy. Then you're really in the game here, right in front of the German politicians. Germany selling Bitcoin, their 2021 Bitcoin sale and their subsequent pro-Bitcoin stance. Hey, we can't miss out on innovation. Selling Bitcoin, then realizing it's essential, now buying again. Creating a reserve strategy now, typical Germany. It's absurd. That means you sell Bitcoin and then you realize, oh sorry, it's a fundamental technology that we actually have to open up to, and now we want to buy Bitcoin again. Now we want to use a reserve strategy again. I mean, that's just typical Germany. It doesn't get any dumber than that. Until then, peace out.